who comes on Judging Freedom, want to get rid of Vladimir Putin, and they believe that this is the means to do it. They want to search the world looking for monsters to slay. They don't realize that when America does that, it doesn't bring liberty, it doesn't bring peace, it brings violence and destruction.
You ready for this one? Another arrogant boy, this guy Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO head over there.
Right.
Quote, it may sound like a paradox, but military support for Ukraine, you ready, is the fastest way to peace.
It not only sounds like a paradox, it's an oxymoron. I mean, without getting too into the grammatical weeds, this is like, let's kill for peace.
Yeah, perfectly said. Let's kill for peace. Let's kill for peace. Then he goes on to say, we know that most wars end at the negotiation table, probably this war too. But we know that Ukraine can achieve in these negotiations depends inextricably on the military situation. For the artillery, we need an enormous amount of ammunitions. We need spare parts. We need maintenance. This is a huge undertaking. We need to ramp up production, and that is exactly what NATO allies are doing.
Wow. And Raytheon can't make this stuff fast enough.
And you see the stocks of Raytheon and Lockheed Martin? Way up.
No.
Way up.
No surprise. I mean,
So
30 years ago, there were 51 major defense contractors. Now there's five.
And you know who did that? Wrote about it in my book, Trends 2000, back in 1996. Bill Clinton.
Yeah, that's when it happened.
Yep. Lockheed Martin, merging all the companies. Yep.
Right.
And that's why they pay that little clown, that arrogant little boy that every time he got caught with his pants down, bombs away over Baghdad. What do you think they pay him? $300 and $300,000 to speak for 1 hour.
Are you talking about Bill Clinton? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he still does that anymore, but he was doing that.
He was doing it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's payoff. You can hear this guy bullshit for free all day long.
Correct.
So then when we're looking at this and how they're leading us into war, you had said, and I followed up on this. Well, first of all, they're now talking more and more about nuclear war. A nuclear attack would most likely target one of these 6 cities. This was on, I believe it was from Business Insider. For everyday citizens, FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency that can't manage anything, a bunch of little bureaucratic clowns, you ready? Has some simple advice. Get inside, and stay tuned.
We need the government to tell us that.
You're dust. Let's stay inside, stay tuned.
Right.
This is they're preparing us for war. And yes. You said, I said to you one of our podcasts about, they tell you that World War I started when they assassinated the Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo. Oh, and then the other one was World War II began when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And you said,
that's the public school, government school version of how these things started. And unfortunately, that's what most Americans who are the product of public/government schools, they hate when you call it government schools, believe.
Now, what led up to the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
the American manipulation and attempted starvation of the Japanese fleet in the Pacific. Absolutely, totally directed, manipulated by FDR. We know this from the secret telegrams of Henry Stimson, his Secretary of War, which of course weren't released until the war was over and FDR was dead. On December 6th, 1941, 80% of Americans wanted nothing to do with the European war. On December 8th, 1941, it had flipped. 80% of Americans wanted us to enter World War II, and FDR had accomplished his goal, which was to change public opinion so he could help out his second cousin, another murdering thug called Winston Churchill, fight in Great Britain. Was Hitler good? No, Hitler was one of the great horrific monsters of all time. But FDR manipulated Japanese to destroy and kill 2,700 American boys while they slept in their ships docked in Pearl Harbor so he could change American public opinion. You are not supposed to say what I just said. If I were still on Fox News and said this, I'd be off for a week. But it is now well accepted historiography, the history of history, that these facts have been suppressed until recent times.
And most people don't know about this.
Correct.
So now when you said this, I went online and I put that in there, you know, why did the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor? And it came up in that site history. And this day in history, July 26th, 1941. United States freezes Japanese assets. On July 26, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, you ready? Seizes all Japanese assets in the United States. You know why? In retaliation for Japanese occupation of French Indochina. I said French Indochina. Oh, you mean when the French took over Vietnam? When the French took over Laos? When the French took over Cambodia? Why, how dare the Japanese go in there when it's the French colonized it? You know, when my buddy and I went to Vietnam in 1996, like we were the first Americans in there, but after the war, they wouldn't allow people in there. We went to the museum, one of the museums in Saigon. They had the guillotines there from when the French were there chopping off people's heads. So I'm saying to myself, what the hell do I care as an American what the Japanese are doing in French Indochina? Oh, they're on their way into China. That's none of my business. That's why he did this. He stole their money. And then it goes on to say, Tokyo decided to strengthen its terms of its invasion in China by moving through Southeast Asia. And it goes on that the occupation in Indochina, Japan followed up by occupying, you ready? Cameron Naval Base, 800 miles from the Philippines, where Americans had troops, and the British base at Singapore. Hey, what are the Americans doing over in the Philippines? And what the hell are the British doing in Singapore?
There you go. Stealing property, spreading violence, crushing liberty.
President Roosevelt swung into action by freezing all Japanese assets in America. Britain and Dutch East Indies followed. Oh, Dutch East Indies? You mean the people, was a place called Holland or whatever, and they used to steal land all over the place as well?
Yeah. Things don't change, Gerald. We're going through the same thing right now. What is the United States going to want, and what is NATO going to want in return in Ukraine?
The result,
telling people how to live.
Japan lost access to 3/4 of its overseas trade and 88% of its imported oil. Can't understand why they bombed Pearl Harbor.
Right. Right.
This is from History Today.
You will never hear that discussed in a government school ever.
Nope.
Maybe
And
in
so
some
that's where
private
we're at
schools,
today.
maybe in some, pardon me?
That's where we're at today. They're lying us into war. There's going to be a false flag event, and people have no idea. They have no idea. Again, we know what. I'm so concerned. I wonder how Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are doing. I never heard of Heard. Every goddamn day they're talking about this for how months.
Right. Right. All right, my friend.
Well, on a high note, we have to change this government, and this is the year to do it.
It might very well be.
And you're the man that could help lead the charge. So thank you so much for being on. Thank you for all that you do, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Gerald. All the best.
Ciao, ciao.